than the council houses used to be. The issue about the lady herself, I'm all in favour of big families. I think they're great, but I think that they should be founded upon marriage, and they should be founded upon people supporting themselves, if at all possible. But if you set up a system where welfare payments are paid and houses given to people who are not in that circumstance, you can't be surprised when they take advantage of that system. I don't blame this lady for what she's done at all. I blame the politicians who for 50 years have encouraged this kind of behaviour. You can't say that it's the responsibility of the people who look at the system and take advantage of it. That is absurd. If we want it to stop, then we need to turn to our politicians and say, reform the welfare system, which you have made absurdly overgenerous, and also do something about restoring the institution of marriage, which you have systematically destroyed.
Giles Fraser.
I think it's scandalous that we are using the example of this woman as sort of propaganda for benefit cuts. I think we're actually being softened up by examples like this, that there's some sort of distinction between the deserving and the undeserving poor. And it really, for me, is a sort of cover for a much greater scandal, which is the scandal in our housing market, the scandal of what's happening to poor people, particularly in London, where house prices are soaring completely out of control, and ordinary people can't live here. And you know, what's happening at the moment in London is that ordinary people are being priced out of the centre of town, and we're going to end up being like Paris in this country soon, where, you know, all of the poor people live on the outside and all of the wealthy people live on the middle. And these are the real scandals. And you find one small example of a woman like this, which sort of tugs at this seems unfair, but actually it's propaganda for a much, much nastier form of cuts, and that's the real scandal here.
After doing just a little bit of research, I found out a little bit more about this case, and it turns out that it wasn't actually a local authority that built the house for her. The local authority sold the land to a housing association. The housing association then built the land and built the house, which then rents it out to this woman and her family. She doesn't own the house, she's simply paying rent in it. And being a caseworker, I know that once she leaves, if she does leave that, another large family will then take that place and then also pay rent to the housing association who owns the land. Isn't this another example of one of those stories to demonise people who are on benefits, because they've now become public enemy number one, because they're frankly an easy target? As a caseworker, I used to deal with a lot of people who are on benefits. People would always come up to me and say, I've worked hard all my life, now I'm on benefits and I'm ashamed of myself. This demonising has now made people who have paid all their years of national insurance feel ashamed of the money that they have taken, they have a right to take. Why are we doing this to the people who most need our help? We know the economy is bad. There are more people on benefits. We should be helping these people, not hindering them.
Okay. And the man in the back there. The man in the back row there, yes.
The reason the UK has such large volumes of debt is because of these high welfare payouts. We can't afford to build people houses willy-nilly.
And what do you think of this case?
It's just an example of how generous these welfare benefits are that we can't afford.
Okay. And the man over there on the left.
I take issue with the canon that anybody has an entitlement to live in central London. I've worked all my life. I live not in Middlesex, in Hertfordshire. I can't afford to live in central London. Why should people have it as an entitlement?
You want to answer that as I come to
Diane? The question is, what sort of city do we want? Do we want a city full of capital city full of very, very, very expensive houses owned by Russian oligarchs where no one lives? It becomes a ghost town and all the poorer people live on the outside. I think we want a London that we've always had, which is a mix of people. And I understand, I couldn't afford to live in London in a million years. So I understand that. But actually the idea that ordinary people can't afford to live in London, I think, has actually become a scandal.